Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Although lately we haven't been really talking to rookies, have we been, Peter?
Well, no, I hope they're not rookies anymore. God, it's been years. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So we are about to record or present to you podcast number 387. That means we have 387 podcasts before this, or with this, I should say. And here's the title of today's podcast. Deal Structuring Bonanza for Creative Real Estate Rookies to Use Today. Here's the description. Are you ready to think outside of the box when it comes to putting real estate transactions together? How about all those myths the banker throws around about how you have to get a loan from them to replace the money the seller already has in the deal, instead of showing the seller how they can make tens of thousands by not selling right away? Beware, this is not Grandma's real estate podcast. So buckle up, rookies, because we are about to launch you into a whole new secret world where adrenaline runs high, heartbeats race, and some even feel faint once they hear these simple, gargantuan profit deals laid out today. This is not your typical snooze fest real estate talk. We break all the rules, bend the system, and blow open the big vault doors for our profits. Just ditch your doubts, grab your thirst for an adventure, and tune into this creative real estate deal structuring expedition where we will unleash your inner daredevil. So let's get started.
Okay.
Wow, that was a little bit dramatic, wasn't it?
What else is new? you got to have some kind of, entertainment.
Sometimes I feel like
value.
I'm writing for a soap opera.
Oh, well, look at your life, look at mine. And folks, look at your lives. Come on. We can make a movie about all of us. Selected, of course. Selected scenes.
So I'm going to repeat some of the stuff we talked about on podcast number 386, just in case some of our listeners have not listened to 386. But before I do that, I want you to know that I put a 10-part series, a masterclass that I used to sell for $300, inside the description. There's a link there to go get it. Because what I realize is I'm going to talk a lot of significance. You're going to hear a lot of, we're going to do the math and do the deals, and I go kind of quick, so sometimes you may not get it, you may not understand it. So I put this masterclass that goes over all these deals, plus more, with me on a whiteboard actually writing the numbers down so you can see them just like what I'm explaining today. Now, they're not the same exact numbers, but they are the strategies that we use to do these deal structuring. So make sure you go off into the description and click on that link and get your masterclass as soon as possible. Also, please make sure you subscribe to us and like us and leave us a comment. Okay? So, here is the gist of Planet Bill's creative real estate math.
Okay.
So, way back in the day, which at this point, I have to say is probably, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago, 25 years ago. I was doing deals. I owned a auto repair facility, used car lot, and a gas station. And it was running by itself. I was there, but it was running by itself. And you have to understand when I say used car lot, I was never a used car. I didn't know how to run a used car lot. It happened to me by accident. Somebody needed a car repaired, didn't want to do the repairs, and said, "You want to buy the car from me?" I bought the car. I stayed myself at night, and I repaired the car a couple nights in the Saturday afternoon, and I put it out front, and I sold it and made like $1,000.
Not bad.
And I'm like, holy shit, I didn't know I could make it. Now this is going back. I mean, this is 30 years ago.
You were a kid.
If not more. Yeah.
You were a kid, straight out of high school.
Yeah, well, not quite, but I was in my early 30s, late 20s anyway. So here's what happened. I decided, well, I should do more of that. And it just kept growing and growing and growing to a point where next thing I know, I was selling 30 cars a month myself. Thinking that I was not doing good enough. Until all of a sudden people started coming poking around and started telling me how extraordinary I was, which I didn't want to hear. But I realized that I was doing better than most used car lots because I was just doing it without all of their theory and methodology and how they advertise and all that. I wasn't doing any of that. I just had my own little system. Okay? And it grew into quite an empire. I mean, our numbers were phenomenal. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to make a point here. It was because I broke all the rules. I didn't do the norm. I didn't follow the industry. I did what I felt like my person paying me wanted me to do. And I was just kind of young, dumb, and naive.
Yeah, but when you say something like that, like following what the customer wants, that's the essence of business. That's the essence of art. You write a book, right. You make a movie, you write a song. You want, what will the listener, the audience, the customer, what do they want? You can't get better than that. So
well, you have to be careful because if you get into the world of politics, there's a blue party that feels like if they tell you what you think you want to hear, they'll get elected. And then recently there was a red party. Not all of them are the same, but that red party understood what you wanted. There's a difference between telling somebody what they want to hear and somebody that really understands and really has empathy for you and what you're going through.
Right.
There's a big difference. Anyways, so
good.
That's not the point today. So here's my point. So I, by accident, did the same exact thing with creative real estate. I went to some seminars. I got a taste of what it was like, and I was like, I'll never forget the day that the light bulb went off for me. I was at a seminar. I'm not going to say whose seminar. I'm not going to say who was talking on the phone. I'm not going to do any of that. And they had an extra session at night. And you have to realize these seminars were $5,000 and $10,000 a piece, and I didn't have that kind of money back then. So I'm scrounging and borrowing money. I'm selling things. I'm doing all kinds of stuff to get to these seminars, right? So I stayed late one night, and this guy was on the phone. And I remember, I don't know who I was with. I don't know if I was with my wife or my dad. My dad went with me a couple times. But I remember turning to my right. I don't remember who I was talking to. And I remember staring at them. They're like, what's the matter? I'm like, he sucks.
So the guy was on the phone doing phone calls to sellers? Like, and you're watching how he does
I'm sorry,
right?
I skipped a part. He's on stage, on the phone, and the speakers are up in the ceiling. We could hear the seller talking.
Yeah.
He's on his microphone. We could hear the seller responding to how he was talking to them. So it's 1,000% live. It was live calls. And I remember this guy royally sucks. And he did. His wife was in the back of the room. She made all the deals, but he sucked. But he had a stage ego. He was one of those guys that wore fancy clothes and thought if he wore a suit he meant something to somebody, and dyed his hair and had a mustache. The regular, California, L.A. Let's go, let's go, brother. Type of guy.
Look at me.
Or that New York car guy that's kind of like a little sleazy and got the jewelry on and that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's how he appeared to me, anyways. Anyways, I went home and just started. After that, I broke the ice. I went home and I just started because I'm like I could talk to people better than I on the phone. So I made it a challenge and I went home and started making phone calls. So that progressed for a little while to a point where I got too many deals. I was too many appointments, too many deals. Now realize back then we would do 12 to 15 appointments a week where we sat nose to nose, toe to toe in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So we would make appointments and actually go visit the house and do the presentation at the kitchen table or on the living room sofa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So a lot of my feedback came from the responses of that seller sitting in front of me. AKA if we had short conversations or long conversations, and what it resulted in. And after a while, I realized how to start talking to people and giving them what they wanted. Right?
Yep.
Now you have to realize that I was pure subject to back then. All I wanted to do, all I knew how to do, my first deal was a subject to deal. And I always tell you, because I've seen it with so many of my coaching clients, when you do your first deal, that's the deal you'll remember forever.
You know how to do it. Well, at least you know how to do one. It's better than zero, right? You have some kind of direction.
You've gone through the entire process on that deal, and because it's your first one, it's like the first person you had sex with. You'll always remember it. It probably wasn't good, but you'll remember it. There's a soft spot in your heart for that person. Or it's the first time you drove, you remember the car. Or the first time, the first time you went to college, you'll remember that. I mean, it's like there's a first time for everything, right?
Yep.
So, anyways, I was just subject to, and now you have to go back, because this was in the day I was in Meriden, Connecticut. Unbeknownst to me, Robin Thompson was my competition. She was actually boots on the ground. This is before she was a speaker and very popular in the training world. And then Than Merrill came along, and he was in my backyard. Mm-hmm. So the three of us were in the same 2 or 3 cities. I used to speak to Than often about making more than just a rehab retail offer. And he knew it, and he admitted to me quite a bit, but he felt like he wanted to teach it, so he was just doing the one offer pitch.
Yep.
Right? So, and I tried to get him to give me his leads, and it didn't quite go that way. Because I figured if he couldn't buy them, I could with my creative. So I started creating in my own mind by necessity alone. How can I take all of these creative real estate strategies and put them in one presentation and know which one to use? And that's where the magic came out. So I started doing that kind of intuitively, like without any training. I would go to this seminar, I would read that book, and I would get some information, and I was all over the place. But I was making deals. And one thing I learned is when I talk to a seller about a deal, I would talk to them about that type of strategy only. Like if I'm talking about subject to, I didn't say anything about leases or options or owner's finance. I didn't talk about any of that. I just talked about subject to.
Sure.
Until I got my 5 or 6 no's, then I would say, well, how about this? I got another idea. And I would move the strategy.
Yep.
And it worked. Well, I thought I was just kind of like struggling along, and I thought, this is starting to work. And then I hired an acquisition manager. That acquisition manager, his name was Chin, Indian guy, was a great guy. And the other guy's name was Bill Hull. And so these guys started going in the house with me, and Chin was young. He was much younger than me, and like out of high school type of guy. He was in college, and he was very inquisitive, and actually my career, I kind of owe it to him, because he started asking questions like, how do you know what offer to make? Like, how do you know where to start when you're in the house? It's like they give you all this information. How do you dissect that information quick enough and then know how to give the exact right offer? So I started what we call two-way communicating with him. In other words, I shared my ideas, he shared his ideas, and I kept talking to him. And we would do this on the ride to the service, on the ride to the call, and on our ride back. Because we were in the car all day, because we were going from one call to another call to another call. And he would set up the appointments for me, and then we would go do it. So that long story, which I hope I didn't bore you, but this is how it happened. So what eventually happened, again, necessity level is the mother of invention. I had to come up with something for him to mathematically or simply know which deal to do. So here is what we did. And these, by the way, are in what we call a hierarchy order. So in other words, the top one is the best for the seller and the least best for us.
Right.
And the bottom ones have more equity in them and are the best for us. They're good for the sellers too, but they take more work. So it starts from the easiest deal and it goes down to a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. So when you're a rookie, you should pay attention to these deals. You should start at the top and do the top transactions, the first 1, 2, or 3 transactions, because they're easier to do than the bottom ones, because it takes more practice. You will eventually, if you do enough of the top 2 or 3, you'll get good at it and you'll understand what to do, and you'll eventually start doing the other deals without even realizing it.
Yep.
Okay? So the very first deal at the top is what we call a slot deal, which is a joke that I did with you because we used to go out in the car and do appointments like I was talking about. This is years later. And I told you, because you were asking about it, and you were just like Chin, you would ask a lot of questions. You still do, which is very good for our rookies, right? And I said to you, this deal is like a slot machine, Peter. You put $10 in, and 10,000 comes. You pull the lever, and 10,000 comes out. And so we jokingly named this a slot deal, and it stands for sandwich, lease, option, transfer. The easiest way to understand this deal is you're getting a lease option from your seller and wholesaling it to a person that's going to live in the house, which we call an end buyer.
Yep.
Now, the interesting thing about a slot deal is you're only making money on the difference between what the buyer is going to give you for a deposit and what you have to give your seller. So if you can sign a seller up for a $100 deposit, otherwise known as the option consideration money, and you can get your buyer to give you $10,000, you're actually buying and selling the option agreement, just like you do with wholesaling. You're buying and selling a purchase and sales agreement.
Yep.
Right? So you make $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 by selling the option agreement. So the slot deal is 100% loan to value ratio. That means they owe what it's worth, or that means that they're not willing to sell for less than that number. They could be free and clear. If it's worth $200,000 and the seller wants $200,000, not willing to budge off of it, then you got to do a slot deal. Okay, so a slot deal has 100% loan to value ratio, and it has no available equity.
Right.
Until you make it. We're going to make the equity, but that's another story. The next one down is called an option purchase, option to purchase. That's much like if somebody wants all cash for a deal, you tell them, well, you could do that. You sign on a 90-day option agreement, and you do much like what a realtor does, and you go and find the buyer, and you do that. And there's specific ways to do that. For example, if you're going to save the seller 10 or 15%, well, if they use a realtor, it's 15% closing costs. If they sell it on their own, it's about 10 or 12%. So if you can save the seller the closing cost, it would be no different than selling with a realtor, right? So if they have a $200,000 house and they're going to spend 15%, that's $30,000. They're only going to net $170,000.
Right.
So if you give them an option for $175,000, that means you're paying $5,000 above what they would normally get with a realtor. And then if you turn around and you go sell that house for, we'll say, $185,000, you're going to be $15,000 below market value, and you're going to get a lot of attention.
Yep.
Okay, so that's an option agreement. I'm not going to explain all these deals, but those two I wanted to. So an option agreement is 90% loan to value ratio, which means it has 10% equity. Loan to value ratio means what they owe divided by what you want to pay them. That's the equity.
Yep.
Okay. So if you want to pay them $100,000 or 200, we'll say $200,000, then you take what they owe, we'll say $150,000, and you divide it. You put $150,000 into the calculator. Right? You do $150,000 And then you have calculator, hit the divide button, and then put in 200,000, and you hit equals, and it tells you it's 75%. Okay, so a slot deal has 0 equity, an option deal has 10% equity. The next one down is a lease option. Now, a lease option is very similar to a slot deal. It's a sandwich lease option deal, except you get 15% worth of equity and 20 or 25% worth of cash flow, so you stay in the deal. A slot deal, you don't stay in. You just get your profit, and it's in and out 10, 20, 30 days. Right? A lease option, you stay in it. That's where you get money now, money monthly, money later. So that's 15%. Getting the deed, we also call subject to, has 20% worth of equity. So that means your loan to value ratio shouldn't go more than 80%. A rehab retail deal has 30% worth of equity, so you shouldn't pay more than 70% loan to value. A wholesale deal has 40% worth of equity, otherwise known as 60% loan to value. And the last one is owner financing, which has 100% equity and no loan to value, which means the rules are wide open. Whatever you guys can agree on, you and the seller, is free space.
Yep.
Okay. So this little table that I have, which you can find at flippinghousesforrookies.com, is our guide. This is how I train my acquisition manager, and after I went into, decades later, I went into teaching you and others. This is how I do it. So it's easy. So if you could somehow, on a slot deal, you don't need to know how much the mortgage is or how much is owed. You just give if they want 100%, they're not willing to discount. You just do a slot deal.
So I was thinking about that as you're talking. I mean, the actual numbers are an actual limiting factor. You can't deny that. But you also have the seller. If they're not willing to do less than what they're willing to do, that's the numbers too. Like you say, if it's free and clear, but the guy goes, no, I want all the equity. Well, there's no other deal you can do, because when you sell it, it costs money. And you can't buy it for what he owes, because you're not going to make any money. You don't break even. So it's first the numbers that are really there you have to abide by, because they're the real numbers with the bank and the law. But the seller could just say he's not willing to do anything less, and you got to play the game with him. It's his house.
Right. So we call a person that understands this a dealologist. So a dealologist, which is a person that could make good offers with this, and the reason why I call it a dealologist is ology means the study of the deal.
Yeah.
So while you're talking to someone, you're studying the deal. And there's two sides of everything. Everything's a dichotomy.
Yeah.
In my mind, dichotomy means plus and minus. It's not opposites. It's not, black and white. It's plus and minus. Right? So there's two sides to everything, right?
Sure.
So the point that I'm trying to make is that there's the math, and I've had a lot of students. I've had my other partner, Sean, tell me, you got to call this person. It's a subject to deal. And I call them, and they don't even know what subject to is. To find out he did the math and decided, it's a perfect subject to deal.
Yeah.
The other side is the human element. People's emotions and feelings and what they're willing to do and not willing to do, and if they're embarrassed or if they have influence in their environment, and they're not they're the decision maker, but they have a realtor in the background that's not in the deal but giving them advice, or an attorney or an accountant or a wife or a husband or a kid, or there's so many elements on the emotional side. So a dealologist massages the math and the people's emotions to come together on what works for everyone.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, makes sense. That's what I've noticed working with you, the two sides of it.
Right. So with that said, every deal kind of starts the same. So here are some of the examples I have. So last week we were doing, or last episode we were doing bigger numbers, which I'm going to come to. I'd like to do at least a couple deals today.
Yeah.
So on this first example, a house is worth $95,000. So we're from Connecticut, and our price of our houses there are $300,000 and $400,000. which is what most of the country is now. But I also do Akron and Cleveland, Ohio, and these are one of those deals because they're cheaper houses. So the house is worth $95,000. The seller owes $82,000. The monthly payments are $580. That's with the taxes and insurance. And the house is pretty and doesn't need repairs. The seller's mother is ill and lives about 2 hours away and will need to live with her mom. And wants to stop going back and forth. Is a little flexible, but only if it has benefits to her.
Sure.
Okay, so with that said, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to get out our calculator and we're going to put in $82,000 because that's what she owes. You're going to hit the divide button and you're going to put in $95,000 and hit the equals button. Okay?
Yep.
That means that we have an 86% loan to value ratio. So which of these deals could we make first? What's the lowest deal on the hierarchy where we would start and make our most amount of money? We might as well start with the best profit to us as our first deal. So which one is that?
Well, 86% is just over 85. So you go down to that one. That's number 3. Being the lowest one possible, we should have our most money, and that's a lease option that we stay in the deal.
So the first offer we would make them would be a lease option. Now listen to me loudly, please. Because if you go below that and make them a subject to deal, which I would probably do on this deal because I take a little bit of risk. But if you go below that, subject to is 80%.
Yeah.
Right? So 80%, so 95,000 times 80% is 76,000.
Yeah.
But they owe 82. So if you're making them an offer at $76,000 and they owe 82, what are the chances of them wanting to do that deal? Now, some will, very few will, but most won't.
Yeah.
And now what happens is you're pissing the customer off. And you don't want to get into that pissing match, right, with the customer. There's no reason to go there because you just need to think about what you're doing. Because remember, what did we just say? A dealologist uses 2 parts of the deal, the math and the emotional side, right, the human emotion.
Sure.
It's actually human emotion and reaction.
Yeah.
Is really what it is because you're going to get a reaction when you make the offer. Right?
Yeah, and it's not always a great reaction. Well,
Right.
gee, the math isn't even right on that if you go to the subject to and the guy's $6,000 behind on what the equity in the loan is. So why would you start there?
Right.
That's like very inconsiderate to the customer.
Now, if I knew that I could get $1,100, which I do, I did this deal. I did it and then it blew up a month later. But I did this deal knowing that I could get $1,100 and push it to $1,200 for a rent. Right?
Yeah.
So if I take $1,100, right, and subtract $580, that gives me $520 a month in cash flow.
Right.
Plus, we do this thing called down payment assistance. I would pick up another couple $100. So I figure in that I can get $725 a month positive cash flow. So what I would do on this deal, and again, this is a stretch, and I'm proposing you don't do this, is I would say to the seller, would you be willing to sell the house for what you owe on it? Now pay attention to what I'm telling you. We have an 86% loan to value ratio.
Right.
So how much is that in equity?
14%.
14%. I told you if she sells this with a realtor, it's going to cost her 15% to close, right?
Yeah.
So she's not getting any money anyways.
No, as long as she understands that. And that's part of, right? You have to make sure they see the picture so they can compare it properly to the alternative.
And those numbers are easier to describe to people because, as you so adroitly brought out some months ago, Zillow puts it on their websites now. Like it's going to cost you this much to close, and they're not accurate, but they're close enough that you can say, yeah, but they forgot this and they forgot that.
Yeah, they ballpark 11%, and they put 6,000 for repairs and cleaning up and crap. So it's not
what
not far.
What Zillow's not going to do is it's not going to say you need 3% for negotiating, because nobody gives 100% of what the offer, 100% of what somebody's asking. So national average right now is you get 97% of what you ask for a house, which means there's 3% negotiating. So you could take that number and just tell the seller just what I just said, and all of a sudden you're back up there with those numbers, right?
Yeah, but
the point is that she's not getting, if she technically sells this house and it's 15%, she's only getting like 80 grand. She's going to come out of pocket with a couple grand. She doesn't know that right away. In fact, in this particular case, she did know that because she actually had a realtor pull the stunt on her, and that's why she wasn't using a realtor.
Oh, okay. Oh, oops. Okay.
Right.
Find out the hard way. Well, at least you caught it before it happened. Otherwise, you find out at the settlement on closing day, like, what?
Ironically enough, what happened with this deal is it took me about 4 months to buy this deal. I wrote a contract, and if I remember right, because it was a year or so ago, if I remember right, there were foundation. Oh, I know what it was. There was a curtain drain problem.
Wait, what's a curtain drain?
So a curtain drain is the drain on the side of a driveway or a sidewalk. It's the runoff when the rain, like on the road.
Oh.
The runoff, it has to drain down into the water has to run into a drain so it can not flood the road.
It goes into the sewer. Yeah, okay. With the grate.
And
okay.
it was in Akron, Ohio. And in Akron, Ohio, the city comes out and does an inspection before you sell the house. And you either need to do the inspection or the buyer has to assume the repairs. And the city comes back out and checks to make sure the repairs are done. So even if the buyer assumes it, okay. So,
but wait, they're responsible for the street?
This was in her driveway.
Oh.
There was a curtain drain problem in the driveway.
Oh, ugly.
And so I'm like, how much does it cost? And I couldn't get a direct number. And the more I spoke to the city, the more I got them to reveal to me that, yeah, this has been a problem. This is why she's not selling the house. This is why she had it with a realtor, because the deals blew up because they found out there's a $5,000 or $10,000 underground issue.
Yeah.
Right? And this is why I backed out of the deal, which is why you do your due diligence. So I signed a contract with her, and I went and did my title search, and I did my due diligence to find out that this happened, and this is why I didn't buy the deal.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if she says no, I don't want to sell the house for what I owe on it, which she wouldn't, right? Because you just did a bad job of explaining how much the closing costs are.
Yeah.
Right? The next one up, or maybe she doesn't want to relinquish the deed. You would talk about getting the deed first, and then when you've exhausted at least 5 no's, okay, that's important. Don't miss over that. That's a Jim Camp thing. Jim Camp wrote the book No. You should go buy it on Amazon right now and read it. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal book on how to negotiate and sales talk. Okay. Once you get past your 5 no's and realize they're just not budging, then you would say, oh, I have another idea. And then you start talking about the lease option.
The next one up.
Okay. Yeah.
The next one up. So there's, that's a next best deal for you, and it's fine for the seller. They want to keep the deed and keep some of the benefits of owning the property, then that's that deal.
Now, what I would do, and again, these are my transactions, and I do some hybrid stuff, and I do, different, it's like I don't know how to say it. I put little nuances in the deals. Mm-hmm. And so what I would do is I would tell her, subject to, you get no money. With a lease option, I would offer her a couple $1,000s moving money.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
To spice it up. Even though the numbers throw off a little bit, I would offer her, $1,500 or $2,000 moving money. Okay?
Yep.
And I would do the lease option. I would do the numbers and explain how it works and the pros and the cons. I go through all that stuff until I got 5 no's. Now here's the interesting thing, Peter. Because I do this, I break the rules here. This is why I put in the description. We break the rules. Here's how I break one of the rules. The next offer I would give her would be a slot deal. I would skip over the option to purchase deal, and I would go up to a slot deal.
Right.
And I would get all of that explained to her, how it works, what we would do, go over the details of how it all works.
Yeah.
Okay. Then if she's still 5 no's, and at that point the no's are going to be, I don't want to wait 2 years. I want to get my money now, which in this case she's not getting any money, so I'm just telling you this just as a side note. I would then go back down to the options.
I see.
I would use the all cash offer last. So the option to purchase is the all cash offer because you're going to get a 3-month option to sign in with her.
Yeah.
Because you're using an option agreement, that means that you get a very slight, non-controllable equity share in the house. So you become an equity share in the deal because you have an option agreement with the seller, and you don't need to have a realtor license. It's not against the law.
Yep.
Because you're using an option agreement. That's the way the law reads. It's like that in all 52 states. Okay? And I know because I had a coaching client in Alaska. It even worked there. He texted me the other day too. He's doing good.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, that's how I would deal with this property. So that's 4 offers that you could easily make in a 30-minute period because you knew the numbers. You knew where to start. You got your 5 no's. Oh yeah, by the way, be careful because when they say yes too fast, without questions or details or want to know how it's going to work or what happens next, they are faking you out, trying to get you off the phone, or they're going to ghost you.
Yeah.
So make sure you get 5 yeses as well. So if they say yes, make sure you go over it, go 5 different angles. Like, did you know this? And how about that? And I want to make sure you understand this. And this is how we're going to do it, right?
And in summary,
right.
So let's summarize the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it's true.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it can't be too good to be true. Can happen. So, just make sure it's real.
So, Peter, you asked for these podcasts a few weeks ago. How are we doing? These are live. These are real. These are okay.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, even when you told the story in the beginning, it was real because I've heard parts of that over time, and it just puts a reality on what this is really like in real life. Nothing from a stage or in a book or hype or something online. $39.99 and learn everything. It's real life. So it's something that I'm sure everybody else can relate to because stuff we think about, like how do you and why and how'd you get this far? How'd you get here? It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it's 30 years in the working.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is I feel like my job has been to figure those things out for my own self, for my own selfish determination, my own selfish use. Right? I mean, my education is hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can count 125 in my head without thinking, and I know there's more than that. Right?
Yep.
There's stuff that I still buy shit. I still buy books. I go on eBay and buy books from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and I go back into time and see what they were doing, especially the 70s. The 70s was huge for real estate. what is his name? Came out with the book Buy Real Estate with Low Money Down or something.
Robert Allen,
Robert Allen. Yeah, he was one of the first to publish.
first one I bought.
Yeah.
It's so weird that I read it way back then, but I couldn't get it going. Family, whatever my things were, And the first deal when I started working with you was no money down. Like, I can't believe it. Like, it took a couple of years, but it actually does happen, folks.
Couple decades.
Yep.
So once I figured out how to do it, I feel like my job has been how to organize the information. Right? All that training, those hundreds of thousands of dollars, how do you organize it? And then the third thing is to give it back to you so it's nice and simple. So when I'm saying that I do this or I do that, it's not my opinion. The cold, hard facts with me and what I want you to evaluate about me is this: 12 to 15 houses a week, nose to nose, toe to toe, for decades. And I was buying 7 or 8 houses a month, closing on 3 or 4. Meaning deals blew up and things happened, just like what I just told you with the curtain drain, and relatives get involved, and probate deals, and all repairs are worse than I thought. There's a whole swill of things that will stop a deal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, by the way, just as a side note, and not a joke, the top 2 real estate killers, creative real estate killers, top 2. In this order. Actually, the top 3 in this order.
Okay.
The realtor, the attorney, and the accountant. The ones that should understand it the most don't. But I could tell you, in this day and age, I just did a subject to event last night for my email list, which was, I think I knocked it out of the park. I did it. I just keep making it easier and easier to understand. I keep making it simpler and simpler. I had a 90-something% attrition rate, meaning that nobody dropped off the call. We had 2 people, 100 and something people. We had like 2 or 3 people drop off the call.
Wow.
And the reason why is because I try to make it simple. But more importantly, when I do subject to deals, I use attorneys and closing agents. It's not like in the beginning where we used to hide it, right? And we used to do tabletop closings. I don't do that anymore. I prefer to use an attorney.
Well, I think it's interesting when you found at one of the closings a couple of years back, on the closing statement from HUD, Housing and Urban Development, the statement from the government, line whatever, the number, it says
203.
Subject to on the closing statement. So tell me that's not legal.
Subject to. Yep.
Right? So there you go.
All right, so here's the next deal. Houses worth $250,000. By the way, that's U.S. dollars. I'm just joking. Seller owes $150, but is asking $200.
And it's worth $200.
No, $250.
Nope, $250. Okay. Okay.
The monthly payments are $1,380, PITI, meaning principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, so they're loaded up already. House is pretty, doesn't need repairs. Seller's willing to do the deal with me, but wants money from the sale to buy a new house in another city, and they want to move closer to family.
Right.
So, move closer to family. How much of a situation is that?
Well, it depends. We had the one where the couple had to go to Denver because the wife had just had a kid and the husband was getting deployed to the Mideast for a year or something. They just moved to Denver and she was alone. So the parents showed up to keep her company. They had to move fast, so realtor's not going to do that. So we did subject to on that one.
Right.
So
So I'm going to use some strange language here,
Okay.
but I'm going to describe it. So if you had a scale, a sliding scale, and on the left side it was 0, and on the right side it was 10.
Yeah.
What we're measuring is what is ruining a person.
Okay.
So let me give you a definition of ruin, right?
Yeah.
So it's the physical destruction or disintegration of something, or the state of disintegrating or being destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So there's also another definition here. It's reduced to a state of poverty
Oh.
is a ruin. Right?
Yeah.
Cause great and unusual damage or harm.
That's a good one.
Right? Cause great and unusual damage or harm.
Okay.
So when I say it's ruining their life, I mean it's damaging, it's devastating. It's wreaking havoc on every portion of their life. It's leaking in it's leaking into relationships, into their bank account, into their work, into their social life. It's like leaking into all these other sections of their life.
Yep.
Right? It's reducing their state to live the way they want. And in their mind, it's decaying or collapsing or disintegrating. Their life is decaying or collapsing or disintegrating in the front of them. It's right there in front of them. It's what's happening.
Yep.
So when I look at their situation, I look at it, where is it on a scale of 0 to 10? Sometimes I'll ask them. So on a scale of 1 to 10, and you've heard me say this, and I've never told you why I use the scale, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to live closer to your family? Well, it's a 10. So what kind of a ruin is that?
That's a 10. 100%. That's pretty bad. No, there's concerns. There's problems. They lay awake. They put their head on the pillow at night, and that's what they're thinking about. And they don't have a solution. So that's a problem.
So now we're sitting at a bar, me, you, and a bunch of our buddies, and we're sitting around a table, right? I'm going to be a chauvinistic for a second. And this girl walks in. And we're like, wow, check her out. And we go around the table, and one guy says she's a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. Another guy says a 7. Another guy is like, that's a 10. I'm going to talk to her.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference? It's strictly emotional opinion of the number.
Yeah. Well, to me, that means we can't tell what it is just because we see it. We can't assume how hard, because we do that. Oh, the guy's got to do this, so he really... No, you don't know until you ask them. So is that why you do the 1 to 10?
Yeah. So my point is I want to move closer to my family might be a 4 on your scale.
Yeah.
But the guy that said it was a 10, the girl's a 10, is a 10 on his scale. So whose emotions are we going to use? Whose ruin is it? Who is going to jump through hoops and do crazy things to get it off of their back?
Yeah.
The seller that tells you that moving closer to their family is a 10.
Yeah.
Okay? So that would be a question. If they told me I want to move closer to my family, just don't take it as a situation. So let's just role play for a second, Peter. I know this is not part of it, but so okay. Peter, I know you said you wanted to move closer to your family. Tell me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that to you? 10 being the best. What do you think you're at?
Well, it's like a 3 or a 4 because it's just something long term. Because we're retiring and then we eventually want to wind up there. I don't have to move this week.
Okay, so tell me, when you sell a house, it's a lot of work. You know that.
Yeah.
So you're trying to sell the house. So what's a 10 to you on why you're doing this?
Because I don't want to wind up taking care of this house at my age. It's big and it's got a lot of property and a lot of things to do, and I don't want to waste money hiring people. I getting to the point I can't do it myself, so I also need to downsize.
Okay. So what happens if you don't downsize, and that doesn't happen fairly quick? What will happen to you and your family?
I think the upkeep on the house would be too much. Getting a cleaning lady for my wife, getting the landscaping, the shovel, the lawn, the snow, and all that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste $300-400 a month. That'd be tight on our budget. I don't want that.
So would you be willing to talk about some flexibility in the sale of your house to not have that happen?
Sure.
Okay, there you go.
And I just winged all that, but I just made all of it up. It's a little bit true for me as a person, but my reality comes out. But when you ask the person those kind of questions, you find out what they're really concerned about. Of course, you're going to be flexible. Like, if you can help me with that, what do you got in mind? Tell me what. You can always say no, but at least listen, right?
Okay, so I know we're not supposed to be doing role playing right now, but I want to go 15 minutes ahead in the conversation.
Okay.
And I want you to say, Bill, I don't think I really like that offer.
All right.
So go ahead.
I don't really like that offer, Bill.
Okay. So you're saying you're going to pass on this offer and actually go back to hiring a housekeeper and doing all the maintenance and you having to take care of the house. Is it worth you giving up this offer?
Man, I got to think about that now. So.
Or how could I tweak the offer to make you want to do it?
Well, could you wait a few months? Because we're not in a hurry. I want to do this, but I want some lead time to find a property out there. Can you wait 2-3 months for me to find the property?
Here's what I'm willing to do is I'm willing to do the closing with you this week. We don't file anything and get everything on paper so you know that I'm going to perform once you find your new house, and I know that you're going to perform once you find your new house. I'm willing to do that paperwork, and then when you find the new house, we could set the date.
Will you write that in the paperwork that you'll wait for me to okay it?
I'm not going to wait forever, but I will wait a few months, 2 or 3 months, no problem.
Well, I would do that.
So here's my point, and this is why I bring this up, and we got to get back to deal structuring. The ruin is important because when he was giving me shit and trying to back out of the deal, I smushed his face back into his devastation. I smushed his face, and you have to be willing to do that. I smushed his face back into the damage or the harm that he feel like is happening in his life. I made sure I brought up the decay that's occurring in his mind and brought him back on track.
Yeah, but not for your own good to be greedy and make money. It's for his own sake, too, that you have to do that sometimes with people, right?
Sometimes people have an idea in their head that is completely unrealistic. Like, for example,
sometimes
I drive from Florida from Connecticut to Florida. It's 1,400 miles. Takes me 20. The map says 21 hours, and it takes me 23, 24 usually.
Yeah.
So would it be real to tell somebody I'll be there in 18 hours? Right. So I had this idea, and I think I'm going to do it, and I'm revved up about it, and I'm going to try, but it's just not physically possible. So sellers are the same way when you're giving them numbers.
Yeah.
They have their wishes, they have their desires, but then there's a little bit of reality. And sometimes you need to walk away, which is the reason why 40% of all our deals come from follow-up, because they need to go explore those avenues.
Well,
to
yeah,
realize
sometimes
it's not just us telling them that. They're going to have multiple people tell them the same thing.
Yeah. Are they going to try to do something and it doesn't work out, and they go, oh boy. And then they
Which is, by the way, the decay of the market since COVID, because the demand for houses is higher than ever, right? And with inflation, the prices keep going up and up and up, so they keep getting more and more. So they haven't needed us because the market has absorbed, the inflation and the market increase has absorbed all this ridiculousness, which if you've been listening to me at any length, I've been saying that right now is a transition between the slot deal, which I explained earlier, overpaying for the property, into the subject to deal. The reason why is days on market.
Yeah.
Now, I also told you a few podcasts ago that Rocket Mortgage named their top 10 areas. And at days on market, means everything. How long does a house sit on the market before somebody buys it?
Yep.
Well, a hot market is within 30 days. That means it's really easy to sell, really hard to buy. A cold market is 90 days, which means it's really easy to buy and really hard to sell. So 30 to 90 days, the one that's in the middle is 45 days. So Rocket Mortgage posted the least amount on their hot markets was 39 days in the market. Right?
Yeah.
So in this particular case, he's asking $200,000 for a $250,000 house. So let's start with that number. So $200,000 divided by $250,000 equals 80%. So he owes $150,000. Would we try to buy it for $150,000?
There's $50,000 equity sitting there, so I don't know. That might be insulting to the guy. I mean, you would probably ask. I know you, but it's a little.
I would not. If I said to him, if I can give you $200,000, how would you do it? Now here's the last point I'm going to make, and then we're going to end off.
Yeah.
I would say to him, I will give you $200,000. Now pay attention to me. I know that. Remember, I'm telling you. I told you earlier. I've practiced all these things thousands of times. So don't change.
You're not making
the
this up.
words. Don't change the words. Don't think you're better than me unless you've done more than 4,000 or 5,000 nose to nose, toe to toe presentations. Don't mess with it. Just take my word for it. Ready?
Yeah.
Here's how it works.
Wait a minute. Say that again.
Here's how it works.
Okay. You see what Bill just said there? Half you didn't realize those are the important words. That's the important words. Go ahead.
So you're asking $200,000, Peter.
Yeah.
Here's how it works. So what I would do is I would take over your bank payments, your monthly payments. Actually, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to change that. Here's how it works. I'm going to put the house into a trust, and we're going to manage the trust and make the payments from the trust. I'm going to write you a note for the $50,000, and it's going to be interest-free, no payment note. And when I sell the house a few years down the road, I'm going to give you your $50,000.
Yep.
Will that work for you? Now remember, the seller wants money from the sale of the house to buy his new house in another city.
Oh, that's right. He's going to say, no, I need money for the new house.
Okay, so if you need money for the house, I can't give you $50,000. How much is the least amount you think you need to buy that other house?
So he'd say, like, well, I need at least 30.
Would $10,000 work?
Oh. No, I think I need 20 for the down payment.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now, if I give you $20,000, I can't pay you $200,000. I can only pay you about $170,000.
So you give me 170.
So what I'll do is I'll take over your monthly payments. I put it in a trust, take over your monthly payments, and I'll give you the $20,000 to go buy your new house.
And then there's a balance later down the road when you sell it?
There is no balance. I'm going to give you the
Oh, that's
$20,000
right.
now,
Yeah.
and that's all you get.
150, 20. Yeah, I got you.
You get $20,000 now, and I'm gonna pay the mortgage off when it gets paid off.
Okay.
But here's the amazing thing, Peter. You don't have to worry about hiring a housekeeper or doing maintenance or taking care of the house. We could get this done when you're ready. I could do it as soon as a couple weeks if you want. Or we can close on the date of your choice.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll do it.
Now, why did it work, Peter?
Well, what I thought of was like, some of you might think, well, gee, he's given up equity. He bought the house probably for $95,000 years and years ago, or whatever. You know, maybe more because whatever the mortgage balance is. But he's got, he's gotten use of the house, and he's getting the $20,000 he needs to buy the other house. And for him, it might be the right deal to not have the hassle of waiting and whatever it is. And you'll do it whenever he's ready. Now, I have a buyer. You got to move now. You know, that time flexibility. All those things give him flexibility. So he says yes. He could say no, but he could say yes.
Peter, let's talk about something else.
Yes.
God forbid you get done with this podcast and your wife says to you, Peter, go down to Whole Foods and buy me some food.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes, dear. Mm-hmm. And you jump in the car and you go down there. But it's kind of a rainy, yucky day. And somebody blows a red light and they smash into you. Mm. In the car accident, you break your arm. Mm-hmm. So here's my question. Is a broken arm going to hurt?
Yes.
Okay, so what is the only thing you're thinking of when you have that pain?
The food doesn't matter, and nothing else matters, but you need to fix the arm.
Okay, what do you need to fix?
The pain.
You need to relieve the pain as fast as possible because it's excruciating.
Yeah, yeah.
That is a ruin.
Yeah.
So this person is looking to, when you find the right ruin, the right pain, the right devastation, the right decay, the right damaged thing in their life, when you find that right thing, they will be flexible on how fast can I remove the pain.
Right. So it's not just the math. The math may say one thing or the other, but we've seen people do like almost bad math. I've got one to tell you when we get off the phone about like the guy's willing to do that. Like that isn't even good math for him. So, but his emotions are in there. So that's why you have to talk to people and ask questions.
Right. So this is dealologist worrying about the math and the emotions. And I've given you a couple deals today. And we're going to do this for 2 or 3 more podcasts. We're going to talk about this because this is what you wanted. So this is what we're getting. Hopefully this is helpful to people. I would love to hear some feedback on it so I can know whether I'm doing the right thing or not. You can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and put a support ticket in. You should definitely subscribe to us, and you should definitely like us where you're watching us. We record this podcast every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are on. We live stream it while we are recording on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you're on one of those platforms, you can actually send us a comment while we're doing the podcast if you have questions about the deal strategies. Most important, you should go into the description and you should click on the link and you should go get the masterclass and you should see how some of these deals work. I will warn you or forewarn you that I'm gypping you a little bit because that's the math side. The masterclasses are the math side. Yeah. We're not going to go over the human emotional side during those masterclasses because you as a rookie are impressed with the math at first. You don't realize there's a human emotional side or the willingness or the
flexibility.
The wantingness. Yeah.
The flexibility.
Right? So I just typed in what is the definition of willingness, right? Mm-hmm. So it says, so the quality of being happy to do something if it is needed.
Oh.
Right? The quality or state of being prepared to do something, it's the readiness. Mm. Right? Are they ready to do it? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So other words for willingness are inclination, agreement, consent, right? Yep. Will, the wish, right?
Yep.
So that's why the word willingness is so important because are they willing? Are they prepared? Are they mentally set to do these things?
Yep.
So when you're watching the masterclass, it's just doing the math. It's not talking about, is the seller emotionally ready to do these things that we're talking about?
Yeah, but I think that makes sense because if we don't have the right math, we can't do it anyway. So that's our barrier on our end. And if we're comfortable with that, then we can pay more attention to listening to the person. If we're fumbling with the math and the deal, we can't even talk to the person and pay attention and ask questions. So we've got to be a little comfortable with that. And I think we do better listening and talking to somebody at that point. So I think it's perfect.
It's a very good point, Peter. I'm going to bring that up next week or next podcast.
Well, it's true for me. If I don't know what I'm doing, how am I going to talk to the guy? I'm
if
comfortable.
if your attention's on the math and you're not comfortable with that, you're not in communication with your seller, and you're missing him telling you or her telling you what their ruin is.
Yep. Yep.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that word ruin is very specifically used as we read the definitions today.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, cool. Make sure you like us. Make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you leave us a comment. If you have any questions, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, hit the support button, and question for myself or Peter, and we'll make sure they get answered. Have a good week. I hope you enjoyed our deal strategies today, and flourish and prosper. Over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.